It has not been a great offseason if your name is Tom Thibodeau, at least in terms of player relations. A couple of months back, a current Knick and Evan Fournier openly criticized him, said he had no relationship with Tom Thibodeau, and even went as far as to question some of his coaching methods during practice. And he's not the only one. During Bill Simmons' podcast, a former New York Knicks player in Austin Rivers openly spoke out on his time as a New York Knicks player, and he revealed some shocking comments on Tom Thibodeau, basically helping us understand how much power Tom Thibodeau has within the New York Knicks organization. We're going to break down his comments, look at exactly what he said, and actually see how much power Tom Thibodeau has in regards to player development within the New York Knicks organization. All of this and so much more today. Let's get started. Austin Rivers didn't feel supported as a New York Knick. Unfortunately, these comments aren't foreign if you've been following this story for the New York Knicks. Former players have openly spoken out on their time as a Knick over the last few years, and sometimes the comments have been good, but oftentimes the comments have not been good. And Austin Rivers joins that pool now of players that unfortunately didn't have a great time as a New York Knick. Let's roll the clip regarding his time as a New York Knick and what he said about it.
The Knicks one messed with me for a little bit because I was having some really good success there early on, and it just felt like the whole time I was there, they were kind of waiting for me to either not play well or something to happen so they could bring in Derek. That's just how I felt, you know what I mean? And I understand that was Thibs' guy. Thibs has always been a Derrick Rose guy, and I totally understand that. He won an MVP under him, etc. Yeah. But I was brought there. And from my understanding, he wanted Derek from the beginning, and Leon Rose kind of went my direction. And when I came there, it just didn't feel like I was ever really, I don't know. It just felt like the cards were stacked against me on that one. And as soon as an opportunity came where we lost a couple, or if I didn't play a couple good games, or like naturally so, it was just an immediate conversation. Like, hey, we're bringing in Derek. I was just like.
Those were some pretty explosive comments by Austin Rivers. You can tell, hearing him talk about his time as a New York Knick, he just wasn't happy and he didn't feel supported. He felt like every time he came into the game, they were waiting for him to fail, and even when he had success and he was doing well, he felt that Tom Thibodeau was just waiting to put in Derrick Rose, waiting to have Derrick Rose enter the game, and waiting for Derrick Rose to basically save the Knicks, do what he needed to do, and basically play his guy in Derrick Rose. And because of that, Austin Rivers felt he had no chance, felt he could never move in or up within the New York Knicks rank, and always felt that he had something going against him when he went into the games. And as a player, you don't want to feel that. You don't want to enter a game and feel like the cards are stacked against you, as he put it in that interview that he did with Bill Simmons. You never want to enter a game and feel that way. But he felt that way under Tom Thibodeau. And this is something to note, and here's why it's important. In the NBA right now, social media, interviews like this, players talk, and everybody hears the comments that players say about you. So when they're asked in interviews or polled regarding what teams they want to go to, they're going to remember what players said about you and about the franchise and about the New York Knicks. And if they hear comments from former players who used to play for the franchise that say, when I'm put into the game, I don't feel supported. I felt like they wanted me to fail, basically. I felt like they wanted to put somebody else in and were basically counting down the days until I would fail. That's not what you want to hear. You certainly don't want to hear as well, too, that Tom Thibodeau, the coach, favors some players. And when you're in the game, he's basically wanting to put in the other player over you and waiting for your demise in order to do that. That's what Austin Rivers said. If you're a star player around the league and you hear that, do you want to come to the New York Knicks? Do you want to come to a team where a coach will openly favor some players over others? Is that the team you want to join? That's what Austin Rivers is basically stating here. Everybody who heard that interview, player, non-player, NBA league source, NBA insider, whoever you are, you're going to come away looking at the New York Knicks in a different way. And unfortunately, that different way doesn't look like it's a positive light. It looks like it's a negative light. And that's the problem. The New York Knicks do not need any negativity on their franchise as they're looking to build a contender in the East. They need to be out of the spotlight when it comes to this stuff. Unfortunately, The past keeps rearing its ugly head, and interviews like this keep going against the New York Knicks. I don't blame Austin Rivers at all for opening up and speaking out about his time as a New York Knick. Unfortunately, I blame Leon Rose and Tom Thibodeau for this, because why would you bring in a player that you're openly not going to play? That sounds like a communication breakdown between Tom Thibodeau and Leon Rose. You can get all the players that you want on this team, all the players with potential that you want on this team. It doesn't mean that Tom Thibodeau is going to utilize them or utilize them correctly. You remember Cam Reddish? Didn't he have all the upside in the world? Wasn't he supposed to be one of the best players for the New York Knicks that we got back in that trade? Wasn't it supposed to be a coup for the New York Knicks, who stole Cam Reddish in that trade apparently, and then tanked his value so much that they had to give up another first-round pick to get off of him? We have to remember what we're talking about here. Cam Reddish was one of those players that had a great ride coming into the New York Knicks. We thought he had a lot of upside. He had the opportunity, but it didn't feel like he was given a fair shot, especially when other players returned from injuries and they were thrusted into the starting lineup and wasn't worked their way back into it. And then when they worked their way back into it and they were a regular starter, it seemed like those same opportunities for Cam Reddish weren't there anymore. And that was a problem. And he even spoke out in one of his interviews after he was traded, saying it wasn't basketball, it was politics. Imagine hearing that as a player coming to a team. Would you want to come to a team that is more about politics than it is about basketball? Is that the team that you want to join? In my opinion, it's no. This is a bad light on the New York Knicks organization when players come out and openly criticize what the Knicks are doing, what they're running, how they're playing players, how they're utilizing players, but more importantly, going back to Austin Rivers, how players feel when they're on the team. That matters the most. If players don't feel wanted and don't even feel like they're supported while in the game, what other star players, let alone any players, even role players, are going to want to come here? The New York Knicks absolutely have to do better than this, and they have to add players with value to the team that's going to have some actual impact to the team. Because if they're not going to be able to play on the team and they're going to be added here, it doesn't make sense to do that. Add players who are going to have impact to the team, or don't add them at all. But one of the things I want to go to, one of the key comments that he mentioned at the end of that interview, was that he was more of a Leon guy and Derek was more of a Thibs guy. And we all saw how that shaked out. So one of the main questions that comes to mind for me is, Tom Thibodeau has final say on player usage. I think that's pretty obvious and pretty clear. Austin Rivers said it, right? Austin was more of a Leon guy. Derek obviously was more of a Thibs guy. We all saw what happened. Derrick Rose definitely was favored a lot more under Tom Thibodeau, and he closed a lot more games to Tom Thibodeau. Even when Austin Rivers came in and was doing well, you can definitely tell that Derrick Rose is probably going to close the game at some point in time, or Derrick Rose is going to be inserted. And I think that had a lot more to do with Tom Thibodeau and the way he plays rotations, because he's more of a system player, more of a then riding a hot hand type of player. Because if he did ride the hot hand more, Austin Rivers would have been in the games more, because he did sometimes get hot from three and you had to keep him in some games. However, Tom Thibodeau didn't operate like that a lot of the times. And we see that sometimes with Emmanuel Quickly. We saw that at times with Obi Toppin. It's not foreign to see him do that. But it is something to note that Austin Rivers felt some type of way about it, especially with Derrick Rose being on the roster. He definitely felt slighted, and you can hear that in this interview. But one of the key things to note is, even though Leon Rose brought him in, Tom Thibodeau dictated how he was used. So it's clear as day. Same thing with Cam Reddish. He dictated how he was used. Tom Thibodeau, regardless of who you add to this team, it could be a first-round pick, it could be an all-star, superstar, role player, doesn't matter. Whoever that player is that you add to this team, Tom Thibodeau has final say on how they're used, where they're used, how long they're used, and of course, if they're used. And that's important to note. That goes to say how much power Tom Thibodeau has within the New York Knicks organization. Leon Rose may be in control of adding the players, and maybe Tom Thibodeau has some say in that. But regardless, if Tom Thibodeau has a player on the team, he's going to use them how he sees fit. Regardless of what player you are when you come to the New York Knicks, it doesn't matter. If Tom Thibodeau wants to use you in one way, that's the way you're going to be used. End of story. Case closed. There's no point of arguing about it. That's how it's going to be. And that's something telling for the New York Knicks. And I think a lot of players are going to note that and look at that if potentially they ever want to go to New York. Because if Tom Thibodeau has full say in regards to how players are used, how long they're used, and if they're used, then some players may not want to come to the New York Knicks, because it shouldn't be about that. It should be about how you play, what your play earns you, and how you fit this New York Knicks roster with your playmaking style and what you can do. That should help determine how long you play and if you play for the New York Knicks and what role you have for the New York Knicks, not anything else. If it is something else, then oftentimes that may dissuade other star players from wanting to come to the New York Knicks. But you tell me, folks. Let me know in the comments. Do you think these comments by Austin Rivers are a big deal, or you think it's a big deal about nothing? Let me know, because I would love to hear from you. But until next time, Knick fans, go ahead and leave a comment below, smash that like button, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Until next time. Peace out, Knick fans.